I still remember every detail of that night. The smell of perfume mixed with the sweet frosting from the cake. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses echoing in the big, rented hall. It was supposed to be the proudest moment of my life, my daughter's college graduation party. I'd worked myself to the bone to make sure she had everything she needed to get here. 3 jobs. Sleepless nights. Eating canned soup just to save enough for her textbooks. And somehow, standing there in that crowd, I felt smaller than I'd ever felt before. I was holding a paper plate with a slice of cake, trying to blend in near the corner, when I heard her voice. Her laugh was loud, the kind of laugh that demanded attention. "Yeah," she said, "my dad doesn't understand money. He still shops at thrift stores, drives that rusty old truck, and thinks it's good enough." Can you believe that? The group around her, kids her age, dressed in clothes that cost more than my weekly paycheck, erupted in laughter. I froze. My hand tightened around the plate until the cheap paper bent under the pressure. My heart pounded in my ears, and for a moment, I thought maybe I'd misheard her. Maybe she hadn't said what I thought she had. But then she added, "I love him, but sometimes it's embarrassing, you know?" The laughter got louder. Someone muttered something about small-town folks, and my daughter giggled. And just like that, years of quiet pride, of telling myself that my sacrifices were worth it, crumbled in an instant. I tried to steady myself. Told myself it didn't matter. Told myself she didn't mean it. But standing there, surrounded by people who didn't know me, who didn't know the nights I'd driven until my eyes burned or the mornings I'd skipped breakfast so she could eat, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: shame. I looked down at my hands. Calloused, rough, and cracked from years of labor. The kind of hands that didn't belong in a room like this. The kind of hands she didn't want anyone to see. I stayed quiet. That's what I've always done, kept my head down and let her shine. This was her night, after all. And I wasn't about to ruin it by making a scene. But as I stood there, listening to my little girl laugh at me like I was nothing more than a joke, something inside me broke. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something deeper. A hollow ache that settled in my chest, a weight I couldn't shake. I thought about the promises I'd made to her mother before she passed. How I'd sworn to give our daughter a better life. How every dollar I earned went toward making sure she'd never feel the kind of struggle we had known. And maybe I had succeeded. Maybe I'd shielded her from the hard parts of life so well that she never learned what it cost. The rest of the night blurred together. I stayed in the background, nodding when people spoke to me, forcing a smile that never quite reached my eyes. When the party ended and the hall emptied out, I helped stack chairs and carry boxes, just like I always do. She didn't notice. She was too busy taking pictures with her friends, laughing, living a life I'd worked so hard to give her. On the drive home, the old truck rattled the way it always does, but that night, every creak felt louder. The silence in the cab was suffocating. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. That she was just a kid trying to fit in. That she didn't understand. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the words she'd said, or the realization that my daughter, the person I loved more than anything in this world, was ashamed of me. And as I parked in the driveway of our small, worn-out house, I sat there for a long time, staring at the peeling paint on the porch, wondering if maybe, after all these years of sacrifice, I had somehow failed her. The morning after the party, the house felt colder than usual. The sun was out, shining through the thin curtains, but the light didn't reach me. I sat at the kitchen table, a chipped mug of black coffee in my hands, staring at the photo stuck to the fridge door. It was her graduation picture, the one the photographer had taken weeks ago. She looked so proud in that cap and gown, smiling like the whole world belonged to her. And in a way, I'd made sure it did. I wanted to feel proud too. I wanted that same warmth in my chest I'd felt the day she got her acceptance letter. But all I could hear was her voice from the night before, laughing, mocking me in front of those kids who had no idea who I was or what I'd done to get her there. I'd told myself I'd let it go. That I'd swallow the hurt, just like I always did. But it clung to me, heavy and sharp, cutting deeper the more I tried to ignore it. I thought about calling her. Thought about telling her how much it hurt to hear her talk about me like that. But what would I even say? "Honey, don't be embarrassed of your old man." She'd just laugh it off, tell me I was overreacting. So I stayed quiet. It wasn't the first time I'd kept things bottled up. When her mother got sick, I never told her how scared I was. When the hospital bills started piling up, I never let her see me cry in the truck after double shifts. I'd always been the strong one, the one holding everything together so she'd never feel the weight of it all. But this silence, this one felt different. This one burned. I got up, poured the rest of the coffee down the sink, and grabbed my jacket. The old truck started after 2 tries, coughing and sputtering before settling into its usual rattle. I drove aimlessly, past the diner where I picked up extra shifts, past the field where her mom and I used to sit and watch her play as a little girl. Every turn I took felt heavier than the last, every memory pulling me back to a time when things were simpler, when my little girl thought I hung the moon. I pulled over by the lake, the one just outside of town where we used to go fishing on Sundays. The water was calm, the surface still, like it was holding its breath. I sat there for hours, watching the ripples dance in the breeze, wondering how everything had changed so fast. I thought about her life now, her friends, her bright future in the city, her polished world where my rough hands and old truck didn't fit. Maybe she'd outgrown me. Maybe I'd done my job too well, giving her everything I never had. Still, a part of me wanted her to see. To understand. Not to pity me, but to know that every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every missed meal was for her. If you're still here, listening to this, maybe you know what that feels like. That quiet, desperate hope that the people you love will finally see you, not the mistakes, not the flaws, but the heart behind it all. And if you do, I need to ask you for something. Stick with me. Hit that subscribe button. Because this story, it's just getting started. And it's going to get harder before it gets better. I stayed by the lake until the sun started to dip, the sky bleeding into shades of orange and purple. Then I drove home, parked the truck, and sat there in the dark driveway for a while before going inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I heated up a can of soup, ate half of it, and left the rest on the counter. I didn't even bother turning on the TV. I just sat there at the table again, staring at that graduation photo on the fridge. For the first time in a long time, I felt small. Invisible. Like no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I gave, it would never be enough. But deep down, in the place I didn't want to admit existed, there was still a flicker of hope. Hope that one day, somehow, she'd see me, not as the man she thought was holding her back, but as the father who had quietly given her the world. A few days after that morning by the lake, I drove over to see Tom. He's been my best friend since high school, the one person who never cared how much money I had in my pocket or what kind of truck I drove. He was sitting on his porch, a cold beer sweating in his hand, when I pulled up. "You look like hell," he said as I walked up the steps. "Thanks," I muttered, dropping into the chair next to him. For a while, we just sat there in silence, the hum of cicadas filling the air between us. Finally, Tom broke the quiet. "She said something, didn't she?" I didn't answer at first, just stared out at the street, at the kids riding their bikes past the mailbox I'd fixed for him last summer. "She laughed at me," I said finally. My voice cracked, and I hated how weak it sounded. In front of her friends. Called me embarrassing. Poor. Tom didn't flinch. He just let the words hang there, heavy and sharp. Then he turned to me, his brow furrowed. "You gonna tell her?" I shook my head. "Tell her what? That her old man's not some broke loser? That everything I've done since the day she was born was for her?" Tom set his beer down, leaned forward, and looked me straight in the eye. "Yeah. Exactly that. You think she knows what you gave up? She doesn't. She's out there living her life because you broke your back to give it to her. But she doesn't know the cost. She never did." I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. She didn't know. She didn't know that the land my father left me, the only thing I had of real value, was sold the day her mom's medical bills started coming in faster than I could keep up. She didn't know about the nights I'd skip dinner, telling her I'd already eaten, just so there'd be enough food for her plate. She didn't know that when she needed braces, I picked up a third job and slept in my truck between shifts. Or that when she wanted to join the traveling soccer team in high school, I drove 4 hours after work every weekend, running on caffeine and hope, just so she'd never feel different from the other kids. She didn't know because I never told her. I thought I was protecting her. Thought the best gift I could give her was a childhood free of worry, where she didn't have to carry the weight of our reality. But maybe, in doing that, I'd built a wall between us, a wall she didn't even know was there. "Man," Tom said, shaking his head, "you've been her hero since the day she was born." She just doesn't see it yet. But she will. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But all I could think about was her laughter, the way her eyes had lit up when she joked about me to those kids. It wasn't just what she said, it was how proud she seemed, like being different from me somehow made her better. I left Tom's house that night feeling hollow. Driving home, I couldn't stop the memories from coming. Her first bike. Her first school dance. The night she stayed up with me after her mom's funeral, holding my hand in the dark while I promised her we'd be okay. I remembered her little voice saying, "You're the best dad in the world." And now, years later, I was the punchline to her jokes. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the weight in my chest was almost unbearable. I sat in the truck for a long time, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, trying to hold myself together. Maybe Tom was right. Maybe the truth needed to come out. Not to make her feel guilty, but to make her understand, really understand, what it had taken to get her to where she was now. I looked at the porch light, flickering like it always did, and made a quiet promise to myself. The next time I saw her, I'd tell her. Everything. The sacrifices. The sleepless nights. The quiet battles I'd fought alone, all for her. Not because I wanted her gratitude, but because I needed her to finally see me. The following weekend, she came home to pick up a few things before heading to the city. I heard her car pull up in the driveway, the expensive engine humming like it belonged in another world. I stood by the window for a moment, watching her step out, phone in hand, her hair perfectly styled, her outfit sharp and expensive looking. She didn't even glance at the house as she walked up the porch steps. I opened the door before she could knock. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile. "Hey, Dad," she replied, distracted, her thumbs flying across her phone screen. "I just need to grab some boxes. I won't be long. Can we talk for a minute?" I asked. My voice was calm, but inside, my chest was tight. She sighed, not even looking up. "Dad, I'm kinda busy. Can it wait?" "No," I said, louder this time, the edge in my voice surprising even me. "It can't." That got her attention. She lowered the phone, her brow furrowed. "Okay, what's going on?" I gestured toward the kitchen, and we sat down at the table, the same table where we'd shared countless dinners, birthday cakes, and quiet talks late at night. But now, it felt like a mile-wide gulf stretched between us. "I heard what you said," I began, my voice low but steady. "At your party. About me. About being embarrassed. About me being poor." Her face flushed. "Dad, it was just a joke." "No," I cut her off, my tone sharper than I intended. "It wasn't. You laughed. They laughed. And you let them. Do you have any idea how that felt? To stand there, in the back of the room, listening to my own daughter mock me like I was nothing?" For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her jaw tight. "I didn't mean it like that," she finally muttered. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. "Do you know why I drive that old truck? Why I wear the same boots until they fall apart? Why I've never taken a vacation or bought myself a damn thing in years?" She looked away, her eyes darting toward the window. "Because every dollar I had went to you," I continued, my voice shaking. "When your mom got sick, I sold the land my father left me. When you needed braces, I picked up a third job. When you wanted to play soccer, I drove you 4 hours every weekend and slept in the truck so you'd never feel different from the other kids. You think I wanted you to grow up feeling less? No. I wanted you to have everything. And I gave you everything I had to make sure you did." Tears burned at the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. She blinked, her lips trembling slightly. I didn't know," she whispered. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "You didn't. Because I never told you. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I carried all the weight, you could just be a kid. And maybe that was my mistake. Maybe I should have let you see what it cost. Because now, you look at me like I'm less. Like I'm something you have to hide." Silence filled the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound between us. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but sharp. "You should have just tried harder," she said, her words slicing through me like a knife. "Maybe then we wouldn't have been poor." I froze. The air felt thick, heavy. My hands curled into fists against the table, not out of anger, but to keep them from shaking. Tried harder. The words echoed in my head as I pushed my chair back and stood up. I didn't yell. I didn't slam the door. I just grabbed my keys, walked out to my truck, and drove. The old engine roared as I sped out of the driveway, gravel spitting from the tires. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay there, not with those words ringing in my ears. I drove past the edge of town, past the diner, past the lake, until the city lights faded in my rearview mirror and the road turned dark and quiet. I pulled over on an empty stretch of highway, killed the engine, and sat there in the silence. The night air was cool, the stars sharp against the black sky, but none of it brought me peace. I'd done everything for her. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dream I'd quietly buried, it had all been for her. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. For the first time in my life, I wondered if I'd failed, not just as a provider, but as a father. Weeks passed in silence. No calls. No texts. Not even a quick "How are you, Dad?" from her. The house felt emptier than ever, like the life had been drained out of it the moment I'd driven away that day. I still went to work. I still showed up for my shifts at the diner and the hardware store. But I was moving through life on autopilot, just trying to get through each day without thinking too much. Every night, I'd sit at the kitchen table staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over her contact, wanting to call. But what would I even say? That I missed her? That her words still echoed in my head every time I closed my eyes? That I was sorry for making her feel ashamed of me, even if I'd never meant to? I never pressed the button. Then one night, after another long shift, I came home to find an envelope sitting on the porch steps. No return address. Just my name written in her familiar handwriting, neat, careful letters, the same way she used to write notes to me when she was little. For a long moment, I just stood there, the envelope trembling in my hands. My first thought was that it was some kind of mistake. My second thought was that maybe she decided she wanted nothing to do with me, and this was her way of saying goodbye. I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it like it might vanish if I blinked. My hands shook as I finally tore it open. The first line stopped me cold. "Dad, I am sorry." I read those words over and over again, like I didn't believe they were real. She wrote about the night of the party, how she'd been trying so hard to fit in, to make her friends think she belonged. She said she'd laughed at my expense because, in that moment, it was easier than admitting the truth, that she was scared of feeling less than everyone around her. She wrote about our fight in the kitchen, about how my words had haunted her since that day. She said she'd gone digging through the boxes in the garage, trying to find answers. And that's when she found everything, the hospital bills with Mom's name on them, the letter from the lawyer about the land, the faded pay stubs from all the extra shifts I'd worked over the years. "I didn't understand what love looked like," she wrote. "I thought love was the easy stuff, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, hugs after school. I didn't see the sacrifices, the quiet ways you gave up pieces of yourself so I could have a better life. But now I do. And I am so sorry." By the time I reached the end of the letter, my vision was blurred with tears. She told me she loved me. That she was proud of me. That she'd been too blind, too selfish to see the truth, but she saw it now. She signed it the same way she used to sign her school notes when she was a little girl, "Love, your daughter." I sat there at the table, the letter trembling in my hands, and let the tears fall. Years of holding everything in, of biting back pain and swallowing pride, came crashing down in that quiet kitchen. For the first time in weeks, the weight in my chest started to lift. I don't know how long I sat there, clutching that letter like it was the most valuable thing I'd ever owned. Maybe it was. Because in that moment, it wasn't about the money, the sacrifices, or even the pain. It was about her finally seeing me, not as the poor man in the rusty truck, but as her father. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. I don't know how long I sat at that table, gripping her letter like it was the only thing keeping me upright. The words blurred from the tears that wouldn't stop falling, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself feel it all, the anger, the hurt, the exhaustion, and, somewhere deep beneath it, the smallest flicker of hope. The next morning, just as the sun began to creep through the thin curtains in the kitchen, I heard the crunch of tires in the gravel driveway. For a moment, I thought I was imagining it. But then I heard the car door slam, quick footsteps up the porch steps, and a knock at the door. When I opened it, she was standing there. No perfect hair. No designer clothes. No phone in her hand. Just my little girl, looking small and nervous, her eyes already red and swollen. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't move. I couldn't. Part of me was afraid that if I reached for her, she'd disappear, like a dream I'd wake from too soon. But then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry," she choked out against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry." And just like that, every wall I'd built over the past weeks crumbled. My arms went around her, and I held her like I hadn't since she was a child, my chest shaking with sobs I didn't even try to hide. We stood there for what felt like forever, neither of us saying a word, just holding on like we were afraid to let go. When we finally sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where so much had been left unsaid, she reached for my hand. "I found everything," she said quietly. "The bills. The papers. The notes. I didn't understand before, but I do now. You gave up everything for me, and I was too blind to see it. I don't know how to make that right." I squeezed her hand. "You don't have to make it right," I said softly. "I didn't do it for a thank you. I did it because you're my daughter. Because I love you. That's all I ever needed you to understand." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, there was no shame in them, only love. We spent the entire day together. No phones. No distractions. Just us. She helped me fix the loose hinge on the porch door, and I showed her how to change the oil in the old truck, the same way my dad had shown me. We sat on the porch as the sun dipped low, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, and talked for hours about everything, her job, her fears, her dreams, and the things we'd both been too scared to say before. She told me she'd been offered a big promotion in the city but wasn't sure she wanted it anymore. "I thought money would make me happy," she admitted, her voice soft, "but it just made me feel like I was losing who I was. I don't want to lose you, too." I didn't have an answer for her. I just listened, like I always had, and told her the same thing I'd told her 1,000 times before: "Whatever you choose, I'll be here. Always." That night, before she left, she hugged me again, longer this time, tighter, and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Dad. I hope you know that. I'm proud to be your daughter." I watched her drive away, the sound of her car fading into the quiet night, and for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I'd failed her. She'd finally seen me. Not the man in the old boots or the rusty truck. Not the man who couldn't give her everything the world said she should have. She saw me, the father who had loved her with everything he had. And in that moment, standing alone on that porch, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan. My daughter sat across from me, her hands shaking as she held the letter I had given her. The letter her mother had written all those years ago. Tears had blurred my own vision when I found it, and now I watched as those same tears welled up in her eyes. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "All this time, you carried this alone?" I nodded slowly. "I didn't want you to grow up thinking your mother left because of you. She loved you, more than anything. She left because she thought she wasn't good enough. And when she died, I thought, maybe it was better to keep the pain to myself. To protect you from it." She covered her mouth, trying to hold in a sob, but her shoulders trembled. "And I hated you for being poor. For not giving me the things my friends had. I said things to you that," she trailed off, breaking down completely. I moved to her side, hesitating for a moment before placing my hand gently on her back. "You were just a kid. You didn't know the weight I was carrying. And maybe I should have told you sooner. Maybe that was my mistake. But I never stopped loving you, Emily. Not for 1 second." Her tears soaked into my shirt as she leaned into me, gripping my arms as though afraid I might vanish. "I thought you were just weak," she admitted through sobs. "I thought you didn't try hard enough, that you didn't care. But you gave up everything for me, didn't you?" I swallowed hard, unable to speak for a moment. "I did what I could. Maybe it wasn't much, but every decision I made was for you. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, it was all so you could have a chance. So you could feel loved, even if it meant I went without." For a long time, neither of us spoke. The weight that had pressed on us for years was finally cracking, breaking apart piece by piece. The bitterness, the anger, the unspoken words, all of it spilling out in tears and trembling breaths. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red, but there was something softer in her expression. "I'm so sorry, Dad. For the things I said. For the way I treated you. I didn't understand." I shook my head gently. "You don't need to apologize. What matters is that we're here now. That you know the truth. And that we can move forward, together." For the first time in years, I felt hope stir in my chest. Not the quiet, desperate kind I had clung to while she drifted further away from me, but a steady, growing light. We spent the rest of that night talking, really talking. About her dreams, her regrets, her pain. About the years I had hidden my own. The next morning, she surprised me. She asked if we could visit her mother's grave together. It was something I had done alone every year, never expecting her to want to join me. But now, standing beside her in that quiet cemetery, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. "She would have been so proud of you," I told her softly, staring at the simple headstone. "Of the woman you've become. She always believed you'd do great things. And so do I." Emily slipped her hand into mine and squeezed it tightly. I think I finally understand what strength really looks like," she said, her voice steady. "And it's you, Dad. It's always been you." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. For the first time in so long, there was no need for words. The road ahead wasn't going to be perfect. There would still be challenges, old wounds that would take time to heal. But we had something now that we hadn't in years: truth, forgiveness, and the fragile but powerful start of something new. As we walked back to the car, the sun breaking through the morning clouds, I felt lighter. The burden I had carried alone for so long was no longer mine alone. And as I glanced at my daughter, her eyes no longer distant but full of a warmth I had missed for years, I realized that maybe, just maybe, we had both been set free. Because sometimes, the truth doesn't just hurt. Sometimes, it heals.